Hey everyone, and welcome to the Retro channel, and today we're back with the Commodore 386. So if you haven't seen the previous video, we took a look inside this thing and sorted out a bit of battery damage, which is fairly common for a 386 machine. And I want to give a big thanks to Mr. Lurch because this was a present from him. So thank you again, Mr. Lurch. And yeah, today the plan is to get this thing cleaned up and hopefully also take a look at this hard drive, see if there's anything interesting on it. So yeah, the machine is fairly filthy, as is the keyboard. So this definitely needs to be just pulled apart and cleaned out properly. And with any luck, we'll try and give this thing a Retrobright as well. Try and get everything back to its original color, which means we need to pull everything out of this machine, and that means we get to reassemble it as well. So fun times ahead, maybe, hopefully. Anyway, let's get the case off this thing and take another look inside. So I think the case should just slide forward, and it does. And yeah, here we are with the insides again. So let's remove the video card and its little riser board. I don't think I screwed any of this stuff back in, so it should come out fairly easily. And I also didn't put many screws back in the main board. And while I remove this, I would like to give a big shout out and thank you to Nathan, who recently joined the Captain Blood tier on Patreon. So thank you, Nathan, and thank you to all my Captain Blood supporters and everyone else who supports the channel on Patreon. It really does help make all this possible. All right, so this board should come out. And yeah, here's where we had our battery damage, and I've just gone over some of the exposed traces that I did tin with some fresh solder, but I've just gone over with some extra solder mask just to try and neaten things up. But as I said in the first video, there are two transistors that came off the board here, and to be honest, I'm not going to bother replacing them because I don't plan to put another battery in this machine. It does have a header for an external battery, so we'll see if we can use that instead. And speaking of boards, let me take a quick second to thank our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay can make high quality PCBs to your specifications. They also offer PCB assembly, CNC machining, SMD stencils, and a whole lot more. So be sure to check out PCBWay for your next design project. We thank them for sponsoring today's video. Disassembling this board was pretty straightforward. I didn't come across any major issues. It was just more of a pain in the ass to get things like the wires out from around that ferrite bead at the front there. And yeah, it was just a matter of really taking screws out and removing plastic pieces as I went. The front panel put up a bit of a fight, but after some careful prying, it came off eventually. And I decided to remove the Commodore label with just a bit of hot air from the backside because this is all going to go in my liquid retrobrighting container, so it can mess up labels at times. The keyboard was a bit more of a challenge. It's obviously very filthy. The keys themselves, it looks like most of the keys are made out of the type of plastic that doesn't yellow. All of them except for the spacebar. So the spacebar is going to go to Retrobright. The rest of the stuff is just going to get a quick clean in some warm soapy water. And I did notice one key, which was F11, seemed to be stuck down. I actually thought this keyboard might have had springs in it, but it's actually got these sort of flexible rubber membranes that push the key back up. But the one under the F11 key seems to have been stuck down for quite some time. I'm not sure if something was resting on that F11 key and over time it's just compressed that rubbery bit, but after pulling it out, it seemed to get some of its springiness back, so I think it's still salvageable. And after removing all the keycaps, I decided to remove the backing plate as well, which is actually held in by a whole bunch of little black plastic clips. I don't think I'll ever complain about having to remove those little screws from the Commodore 64 keyboards because these clips were far more annoying. You need like 10 hands to do this properly. And with the backing plate removed, that gave me access to the keyboard membrane, which seemed to have some kind of weird film over it. It was almost kind of oily, so I don't know if something's been spilt in the keyboard, but thankfully it didn't cause any major issues from what I can see. And now with all the plastic bits separated, I gave everything a scrub in some warm soapy water and prepared the yellow stuff for the Retrobright container. And while all that was soaking, I took the chance to open up the power supply. There's not really much of interest in here, there was just a bit of dust, but there was one capacitor which was on the 5-volt output side that looked a little bit iffy. It seemed to test okay, but it looked like there was a ring around the top of the capacitor where the label had like shrunken, and I didn't recognize the brand name, so I stuck a Nishikon one in there instead. Apart from that, the power supply seems to be in good order, and it was working before, so I'm not really too worried about it. There were no reefer caps or anything in there, so I'm happy with that. The other thing I did was pull apart the disk drives just so I could give them a good dust out and also manually clean the heads in them, but again, nothing really of interest in these either. Okay, so after a few days, the retrobrighting process is complete. Now, before we have a look at the final result, there is one more thing I need to sort out, and that is our little Commodore 386 badge. Yeah, it does seem to have a plastic film over it, which is good, but I can see underneath that the color is still not perfect. So let's first peel off this plastic film. So it looks like it protected most of the badge, but the bit where it had already started coming off is yellowed. So I'm hoping that some IPA might get that off. I think it's working, but it's going to take a bit of elbow grease. Not quite perfect, but I think it's a lot better. All right, let's bring out the case and get this badge on it. So, here it is. As you can see, the retrobrighting went pretty well. There are a couple of spots that look a little bit odd. So up the top here, there was a sticker, so that part has not yellowed as much and therefore has gone a lot whiter than the rest of the case. And there's a white round spot at the front of the case where there was another sticker. In the end, this stayed in the retrobrighting solution for about 3 days. The disk drives were good to go after about 24 hours, as was the keyboard. But yeah, this front panel and the little turbo switch button thingy around here, that took a lot longer and didn't quite come up as bright as I'd hoped, but better than being orange. And here is the keyboard. Overall, the keyboard came up really well. Obviously, the spacebar is a slightly different color, and once again, that's because I think it's made out of a different plastic, so it yellowed, whereas the rest of the keyboard pretty much didn't, or at least the keys on the keyboard didn't. But yeah, I am definitely happy with how this turned out. It looks a million times better, and it's clean, so I don't feel gross when touching it either. Let's get this badge reapplied. There we go. And that is our Commodore 386 cleaned and retrobrighted. The rest of the case came up really well. Let's get this thing powered up and fingers crossed it still actually works. Oh, and I almost forgot, I did make a little external battery. So I think this thing was from like an LED strip light. So it just had 3 AA's in it. So I've just put in 3 AA's and just made a little wire to go to the external battery header on the main board. So hopefully that should be enough to keep the BIOS settings in there. But I think according to the documentation that I found online, it expects to have 6 volts there, but I've only got 4.5 here, probably less. So hopefully it'll keep the BIOS settings in there for a little while, but I guess time will tell. So before we power this on, let's just open this up one more time. I'll stick this thing in and change the jumper for the external battery. So while I was doing all this, I did get some good photos of this machine, or at least the main board, and I'll submit these to the Retro Web. They do have some information on this main board, which is a DTK PPM 1066C, I believe, off the top of my head. So thankfully they do have some notes on the jumper settings on this main board, and yes, there is one for the external battery. So let's remove this card because the jumper for the battery is underneath this thing. And I went ahead and put in all the screws, didn't I? So our external battery jumper is right here, so we just need to move this jumper over to the other set of headers and hook this up with our negative, which I used a yellow wire for, but I put a bit of black over there. Negative going to pin 1 on there. That should be our backup battery installed. I may actually redo this and get, a pack with 4 AA's instead. So for now, I'm just going to kind of sit this somewhere. It's just going to float around in between all these wires over here. I'll figure out a proper solution later. One more thing I did while I was in here was to dump the 2 BIOS chips. There's actually a copy of these already available online on Bo Zimmerman's website, so zimmers.net. Yes, he already has a copy of these, plus a couple of other versions for this machine. But overall, I mean, this thing is basically a generic machine with a Commodore badge on the front, a Commodore badge on the keyboard, and Commodore BIOS ROMs. It's about as Commodore as this thing gets, but hey, it's still a Commodore, whatever. So I'll submit the photos that I took to the retro web. Whether or not they can use them, I don't know, because this one obviously had battery damage. So, the actual images that I have aren't going to match what the original board looked like, at least not in that damaged corner. And here's the capacitor that I took out. It's really light. It's a bit weird. There's the original battery, nasty thing, and 2 screws. So I know one of the screws goes in the back here. But I'm not quite sure where this screw goes or this little metal springy clip thing. I don't think it really matters. All right, let's power this thing up. I'm going to try and use my capture device to do this. I haven't really tested it out yet. I don't do much stuff with VGA capture, so see how this goes. All right, so I've got the VGA output from this going into a capture device, which is then running into the laptop and being captured by OBS. Let's see. Hopefully smoke doesn't come out. We have power. We have a display and it is currently counting up the memory. We do have a checksum error on extended CMOS. That's not a big surprise at the moment. All right, let's go into setup. Time and date in CMOS is invalid, checksum is invalid, no surprises there. Diskette A, I think I did look up both of these floppy drives and they're both, well, the 5.25 is a 1.2 meg and the 3.5 is a 1.44 meg. The hard disk type, I also looked this up while I was at it, and it is a 105 megabyte quantum drive. I don't remember what the heads and cylinders were. 755 cylinders, 16 heads, 17 sectors per track. Let's see if there's already one predefined in here. 755, 16 heads, 17 sectors per track. It says the size is 100 megabytes, but it seems right. Let's look for any others. Nope. I mean, I guess I could put my own info in, but I think this should work. 755, 16, 17. No hard disk 2, base memory, that all looks good. Display, all right, we're gonna put the display on VGA, EGA. Keyboard, let's put the CPU speed at high. And of course, we don't have a coprocessor, so no need to worry about that. How do we escape to reboot? Hoping that it's saved that info on the BIOS. Starting MS-DOS. Hard drive must be working. There is a bit of video noise in the capture. I guess that would have been filtered out by CRT back in the day, but it's quite obvious here. Alright, so we've got high mem drivers and all that kind of jazz. Loading smart drive spare. DOS key insert. Oh, we have Windows 3.1. Cool. So, it obviously was being used by somebody and they didn't format the hard drive, or if they did, they took it back to stock. Somehow doubt they'd bother though. Mouse is working. Malcolm's menu. Alright, Malcolm, what you got? Malcolm? I don't actually know if this mouse works properly. This came to me from Mr. Lurch. A little side story, I did eventually end up stealing his compact Presario all in one computer, so we'll have a look at that eventually, but yeah, he also gave me a mouse to go with it. But, oh, no, it is working. Sort of. Alright, Malcolm's menu. Is that really it? Where's your solitaire, Malcolm? Wow. Do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, I think the mouse button on this mouse is just a bit iffy. Might have to clean it out. The capture is shifted a little bit to the right, but I think that's just the capture device. Alright. Windows folder. Oh, there's something in there from 1997, so I guess it was still used up until then. What else have we got in here? Win Bible. Just has a README file. X Classic looks like, see, poker, and I guess that's solitaire. So it looks like some kind of card game pack. Oh, we have WinZip 5.0. Word. Not seeing any documents in there though. Something I didn't look at. How much space do we have on this? Ooh. We've only got 8 megabytes free out of 110. So this hard drive is pretty full. Well, I guess that's, you know, about 100 megabytes really. Yeah, that's pretty chockers. It's Reckoner. Microsoft Access, nothing much in there. Michelle and Fairy are a couple of databases. Oh, PK Unzip, alright, always good to have. A-Talk, doesn't seem to be much going on there. Bitmaps, they look like all the stuff that normally comes with Windows, I think. Documents, oh, okay, there's a whole bunch of documents. Stuff about ballet. Nothing. Oh, what is that? Okay, so you can see that this was, I guess, being used up until 1999 and possibly the year 2000. So we have y2000.doc, which has a creation date of, what is that supposed to be, the 3rd of January, and then 19:0. So I'm guessing that was created just after the year 2000. And this machine is not immune to the Y2K bug. Curious to see what this document has in it. Products is licensed to Department of Defense. You'd think they would have at least wiped the hard drive. Or destroyed it. Yeah. She's slow. That's it? Oh, okay. I think it's supposed to say I am in 2000, 0301 2000. The file size is a bit odd though. Why is the file size that big if that's all that's in there? U2K test.doc. Looks like there's also some resumes in here, so obviously won't go into those. I'm sure the rest of it's all just boring junk. Yep. That's not very exciting. Okay. What else have we got? What's in DOS? A whole bunch of temporary files. A lot of temporary files. And the regular DOS stuff. Don't see anything very exciting there either. Lame. Excel, meh. My stuff, apparently you don't have any. Quicken, boring. Sounds, they're not going to work because don't have a sound card anyway. And they got a little piezo speaker. Don't know what that is, but doesn't look very exciting. Super, Super 96. WinProj. Don't know what that is. Ah, Microsoft Project. Is that like PowerPoint these days? Sounds like the hard drive needs a good defragging. It's seeking all over the place. Welcome to Microsoft Project. Kinda wish I didn't bother. I don't want to know the tip of the day. Okay, so it's not like PowerPoint. Well, I was hoping to find some games or something, but this is all very, very business, very serious stuff. The hard drive is really working overtime. I think I might get this hard drive backed up and probably do a full reinstall because, yeah, it's almost full and defragging it will take forever. So probably better to just do a clean install. I'll probably do Windows 3.1 again. I definitely won't try and do 95 on a 386, but I think Windows 3.1 is okay for this machine. But yeah, I think we should stop messing around with it. I do have further plans for this machine. I don't really plan to go anything too modern. I do want to keep it sort of as a 386, so I don't plan on putting like a CD-ROM or a Gotek or compact flash or anything in that. I do want to try and keep using the original hard drive and the original floppy drives, the original VGA card. Might add a sound card to it, but I do have a couple of ideas in what upgrades we can do that would be still period correct. So we'll look into that another time, but I think we should leave it here and I should get this hard drive backed up before it dies, possibly. Anyway, a huge thanks to the people who support the channel on Patreon. Thank you to Mr. Lurch for this computer. Thank you to Nathan, who joined the Captain Blood tier. And thank you all for watching, liking, subscribing, all that jazz. I'm going to get this backed up and poke around at it a little bit more, but that is it for this one. So hopefully I will catch you in the next one. Bye. Let's shut this down. Oh, I didn't even test out the keyboard, really. Probably should do that. It seems to work fine.